The story about Donald Trump's taxes. Now, to be clear, it's being reported as if his taxes have been acquired by the New York Times. It is not his taxes. What they've only gotten essentially the top sheets of his taxes, which are the 1040 forms from 1985 to 1994. However, and so it doesn't really quite show the mechanisms of this happening. But the big stories are that Donald Trump apparently, and again, it's hard to really even determine this, I think, from the top sheet, because businesses, individuals can make it look like they've lost a lot of money. For 8 of those 10 years, he did not pay any federal taxes. And wealthy people have mechanisms that are legal, sometimes not legal, sometimes shouldn't be legal, but are legal, to make it look like they have less money or less income and therefore pay less taxes.
You think Trump might be involved in something like that?
I would be shocked, but yes, I do. It also appears in multiple years, he appears to have lost more money than nearly any other single individual taxpayer in the country.
The one that matters is me. I'm the only one that matters.
God, like, why do we even bother to pay our taxes? Jesus Christ.
There was also some type of weird spike in his income in 1989 that nobody can account for, of $52 million.
Everyone knows that, and it almost wouldn't even have to be said.
Yeah, there you go. But the interesting thing about this is that what this does is it furthers the argument of now, there is statutory language that says a congressional committee can get anybody's taxes for any reason. You do not need to have a compelling government interest. But Mnuchin was arguing that there needs to be a compelling government interest. Well, the statute was written in response to a scandal where the taxes were required to determine if there was a scandal, if somebody was paying taxes. And so when you have this now in the public record, even Mnuchin's fake assertion that you need to have a compelling interest now seems to be fairly satisfied. We have someone who was the largest money loser in the country, like literally that guy, maybe him and one other guy, and I'm sure it's a guy. And he paid no taxes from 8 to 10 years, yet he's a billionaire. That seems like a compelling interest from a policy standpoint, never mind from any other. From a policy standpoint, we should not have billionaires who build their billionaire. Now, maybe he's not really a billionaire, but he certainly claims he is. So we should not have billionaires in this country. Well, I would put a period after that. But for the sake of this argument, let's have it a comma. We should not have billionaires in this country who have built that financial empire without having paid taxes along the way. We need to change the policy in this country. And so let's have a committee look at his taxes. There's your compelling interest.
Totally
now, I don't know.
unfair.
Maybe that
what
was
the hell's going on?
Maybe that's a coincidence. Maybe it's not. I don't know where they got those taxes from. We were trying to figure out, maybe it was one of his ex-wives. Now, he was married to Ivana during that entire period, except the last 2 years. They divorced in 92. Now, it's not inconceivable, according to perhaps some type of divorce settlement, that Ivana would not have gotten hold of any number of 1040, the top sheets of these forms for the next 2 years, 5 years. That seems conceivable, certainly in the context of my proceedings. we're going to check in with incomes in terms of determining child support. Neither one of us is a billionaire, and neither one of us, but it's conceivable. So it could have come from her, which would be the least problematic in some way. But, look, people leak things. I don't know. I hope it's not from the government. But
My money's on Tiffany. She's the wild card in all this. She clearly hates him.
Tiffany's pretty cool.
hey, Dad, what's that out there on the thing? And she's photocopying 1040s years ago. Now, the other thing that's interesting here, too, is that we know there are ongoing investigations into the taxes of the Trump family. And we know this in part because Donald Trump's sister resigned to avoid at least one of these investigations. His older sister, Marianne Trump Barry, was a federal appellate judge up until less than a month ago. 3 weeks ago, she resigned. There was a court inquiry. Now, this is a court inquiry that came from complaints that were filed last October after the investigation by the New York Times, which reported that the Trump family generationally had engaged in dubious tax schemes during the 1990s, including instances of outright fraud that greatly increased the inherited value, the wealth of Mr. Trump and his siblings.
What?
Judge Barry not only benefited financially from most of those tax schemes, the Times found, this is also in the Times, she was also in a position to influence the actions taken by her family. So in other words, she wasn't just along for the ride, she had to sign off on things. So in a letter of February 1st, a court official notified the four officials who had filed complaints that the investigation was receiving the full attention of a judicial conduct counsel. And then, 10 days later, Judge Barry filed her retirement papers. Here's what happens to such investigations when someone retires from the court. They end. Seems like a good time just to move down to Mar-a-Lago. The investigation becomes moot since retired judges are not subject to the conduct rules. And the people who filed complaints were notified in mid-April that the matter, or early April, had been dropped without a finding on the merits of allegations.
That seems like a poor system, just irrespective of Trump, that you stop investigating judges. It's like they can keep doing corrupt stuff until they're about to get caught, and then they retire, and then...
Well, this is different because it's conceivable that what the Times found, the statute of limitations would have expired. However, so from a criminal conduct standpoint, you would not be liable. But as a sitting judge, and this is awkward, there's actually a higher standard that is applied to you so that you don't get away with like, hey, it's the statute of limitations. Yeah, I was a scumbag 20 years ago, but now I'm a judge. Look at me.
Totally unfair to my sister.
People change.
So she could have lost her job, and what would have happened when you lose your job in that manner? You lose your annual pension as a judge, which in her case ranges from $184,000 a year to $217,000 a year. How would you like that for a pension? Man. I will tell you this right now. Someone wants to offer me that as a pension. Guess what? Early retirement. Actually, that also, I wonder if that isn't a good recipe for someone to go after Clarence Thomas. Anyways, so we have this report that Donald Trump has, over the course of 10 years, from 85 to 94, I think it was, lost $1 billion. The single biggest loser of money in the country. So much so they didn't have to pay taxes for 8 out of 10 years. Howard's friends at Fox and Friends taking the news. My guess is this is good for Trump.
It is an interesting look, though, at how New York City real estate developers work in the 80s and the 90s.
If anything, you read this and you're like, wow, it's pretty impressive, all the things that he's done in his life. It's beyond what most of us could ever achieve.
I don't know that there's any suggestion that he broke the law.
Yeah.
I think the suggestion is simply that he used the tax laws to his benefit.
I think most of us could not lose $1 billion. I agree. It's true. Most of us were not given that kind of money by our
You're not
parents
given
through various fraudulent schemes, and we didn't have the capacity to lose it in all sorts of massively narcissistic, delusional business venture.
That's right, Ainsley. Just get impressed by the glamour of it all.
You're getting $1 billion from your dad. You're losing $1 billion. You're defrauding the government. Dad's helping you with the casino. It's just a big, heady mix of glamour.
Now, I like how they say New York Times leaks a decade of Trump tax returns. Now, of course, the New York Times is not leaking it. They didn't have it. The leak was to them, or someone gave it to them, and they are publishing it. But
No, the New York Times is Trump's accountant.
There you
That's
go,
why they
right.
had the taxes.
yeah, here we go.
Because I like Jewish guys
I love
handling my money.
love this.
Salzberger.
Businessman, which is chronicled here. There's nothing about this article that should surprise anybody that got the Daily News and New York Post throughout the last 10 years. Just give details. Here's an example. He said pass-through income. So, for example, there might be an incentive to go buy that building, to buy that casino, because I'll take a loss this year in order on my tax returns because I want to buy for a rainy day. I have the resources. He goes, there was a time that he was actually building his empire. The information focused year by year at a time of gathering loss. He bought his partners out at Trump Tower, the Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino. He bought an apartment building in West Palm Beach for $43 million and business losses for $68.7 million. For us, or at least for me, I can't imagine having that much money, spending that much money, and being in debt. For him, it makes sense. He's buying now, building it up because he had confidence. He knows the properties would be worth more. The properties began to build in '86. He bought, in '87, he spent $29 million on a yacht. The market crashed the next day. So no problem. He held on to it. He bought a shuttle operation. It didn't do too well, but he held on to it. But when
Pause
he
it. Wait a second. Wait, the yacht is a business expense? Is that what we're supposed to say?
Yes. That's where you have underage. Excuse me.
What?
Meetings.
I
It's
didn't.
for meetings.
You meet people.
Meetings. It's a meeting. It's
You have a lot of meetings.
Conference yacht. Conference yacht.
Operation. It didn't do too well, but he held on to it. But when he sells it, he takes the loss on his taxes. So for you or I, maybe buying a summer home is a big move, or maybe even a trailer. But for Donald Trump, he says, I got some money, but I want to really expand my empire. I want to take chances.
Pause
That's
it. Wait
what
a
he's
second.
done.
So if you sell your second home at a loss, that's a business expense? I don't like it. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that's a little bit fishy here. The things that are constituting business losses are very odd. And one wonders where, if he's this heavily in debt.
Dad
leverage.
rode off the limo ride to come buy chips at
Where's
my
all the
casino
cash
to
coming?
save
Yeah,
my
exactly.
business.
I mean, so, and look, I'm not going to pretend to understand any of this stuff. I have an accountant do my taxes. I don't understand any of it. However, it seems like this is a perfect predicate for Congress to look at these taxes. I mean, this would be a great learning experience. Maybe they can get Brian Kilmeade up there to work with the committee to explain to the country after he takes a look at all the taxes, like why this is just exactly what you would expect from a successful businessman.
Well, it's also like the way Kilmeade says Trump decided he wanted to take risks. It's like the government's insulating him from any sort of downside on these risks.
Right. It doesn't seem like there's much risks. He lost $1 billion and he still has billions of dollars.